Something hilarious is happening on TikTok, allegedly with the adjective brick, where cis people are using it to describe the dolls, thinking it is a compliment. Plot twist. It's not the compliment you think it is. In today's episode, I'm going to get into what it means, where it comes from, the discourse surrounding it, and at the end, my opinions on the term and what I would do if someone called me a brick. So first and foremost, let's look at what the term means and where it comes from. So in the Urban Dictionary, it's something adjacent to like a trans woman that doesn't quite pass because of certain physical traits, usually things like square jaw, broad shoulders, being over 6 foot, etc. And so if you define someone as a bricky trans woman or a clocky trans woman, it's someone that's like unlikely to be passing as a cis woman or as a woman and may never do so. Okay, we're going to come back to the different categories as to kind of what that breaks down to, but for now let's just keep that in mind as a general term. And there's a great creator I found on Instagram called Tenderqueers that is kind of a historian about this queer culture. She breaks down exactly where the term came from, the origination of it. So let's take a look at that first before we go any further.
What is a brick, and why is everyone on the internet suddenly talking about them?
To my beautiful trans folks, whether you identify as a doll, a brick,
the bricks are the dolls.
Who's protecting the clocky bricks?
We do understand that means our bricky sisters too.
I'm gonna need someone to explain the term brick for me in a way that doesn't make you sound like a terrible person.
I'll give it a try. For those who don't know me, my name's Amanda, and I'm a public historian of queer history. Brick is a bit of queer slang that has its roots in the ballroom scene of the 1970s and 80s and has recently seen a resurgence in popularity online. A brick is a trans woman or a trans femme person who is always clocked as having been assigned male at birth, usually because of features like a square jaw or broad shoulders. The word was first introduced at a time when it was still assumed that gender was binary and that every trans person's goal was to pass, to go from one gender to another. That wasn't true, obviously, but that was the assumption, and brick was used to describe people who couldn't pass. It was teasing, so it wasn't exactly an insult, but it certainly wasn't complimentary, especially if you were a person whose goal was to pass. My fellow cis folks, these words are not for us. The word brick has already broken containment. I wouldn't have made the video if I hadn't started to see it all over social media, but what really pushed me over into making it was when I started to see cis people using brick as a compliment, assuming that it harkened back to the idea of bricks being thrown at Stonewall.
So why are cis people using it as a compliment? As she says, the origin of Stonewall and how like a brick being thrown in Stonewall is kind of an iconic point in culture. There's also a lot of discourse about who threw the first brick. That aside for now, throwing the first brick and conflating that with being a brick and being bricky is an understandable mistake, but a mistake it is. The idea of like a cis woman, like me walking down the street and a cis woman being like, yeah, bricky, queen, I would like cry. I'd be like, excuse me? Excuse me, did you just call me a brick? But we'll get back into that and we'll break that down. Why would I be upset by that term? Let's talk about the internalized transphobia. We're going to come back to that at the end. But for now, let's stick to the discourse about the term brick.
You know what trips me out? How they always be talking about a trans woman is a brick. Baby, the song name was Brick House. I know he was probably talking about her wagon, but baby, it take a village of bricks to build a stable home.
Brick house and brick are similar in that they are both AAVE rooted in Black culture. As a white person, is it my place to want to retire language that originated in Black culture? No, it is not. And this is an absolutely fair criticism that I got on Instagram.
Now, as Tenderqueer stated, it does come from AAVE. Like so many other words and slang that comes from that community as well, it's made its way into mainstream, like slay, shantae, queen. All of those things have been like popularized by mainstream media, by the popularization of drag culture, RuPaul's Drag Race, the Trixie Mattel boom and everything like that. Like those terms have like made their way in, and as often does happen, the definition behind those terms has been kind of warped. Like I believe the term woke was originally made by a person of color who used it to define the actual like waking up to the oppression and systematic oppression happening in society, and then the right has quite literally turned it to the negative connotations that it has today. Like it's not the first time, it won't be the last, but with the term brick specifically, this is also just a kind of misunderstanding as to what the actual term means, which I find kind of a bit more entertaining, as it were. So, is brick a slur or not? Now, like most slurs, it depends on two things: perception and purpose. If someone is saying brick purposefully to be hurtful, then of course they mean it as a slur, then it's a slur regardless of its reception. You can intend to harm someone with your words, whether they feel harm or not, that still makes it harmful, so it's a slur. And in reverse, if someone hears that word and perceives it to be a slur or a, harmful thing to be said or mean, then regardless of the intent, it's still considered a slur. I mean, that's how I consider the two. For me personally, obviously I'll get into my own opinions of the term, but like for me, if you're making a connection to someone's physicality, their aimed gender identity, and defining that as not complete, ergo, like because of your physical traits, you're not the woman you want to be, brick, then that to me is extremely insulting, and is bringing light to the things, physical traits like potentially about myself that I dislike, that I don't want to be spotlighted against my will. So that's why I would consider it a slur. But we will come back to that and we will break that down and we'll do some work, okay? This is a thought process happening. So we'll come back to that, because there are, quite fantastically, a group of people within the trans community that are reclaiming the term brick. And of course, when we say protect the dolls, we mean protect all of the dolls, the bricks, the clocky queens, the passing divas, everyone. We mean protect everyone because we are a community. And let me be really clear, that's of course my stance on it. I would never want to other a certain minority within a minority, and we'll come back to the kind of the details within passing and what it means to be a brick, the different forms of a brick in a second. But for now, let me just make it so clear. Of course, we are all a community, and I believe we should be standing together, especially in these dubious times. Now, I would also say an adjacent conversation to this is the discourse predominantly from the right and transphobic people and TERFs, etc., that have this belief that they can always tell.
Hear people engaging in rhetoric around, you can always tell when someone is trans. You need to remind them that's a weak argument and it has no base. Here's why. First of all, if you can just look at someone and tell they're trans, then explain to me why, especially in the past few years, we've seen a rise of cis women publicly being accused of being trans. And the answer is there's a Eurocentric beauty standard racist reason for that, by the way. And two, concurrently with that, how are there trans men and trans women who live stealth, aka navigate the world basically as a cisgender person, not disclosing their transness to their work colleagues or friends, out here? Many trans folks in the past lived stealth because they had to for safety, and a lot of people still do for a variety of reasons. And look, I'm not saying there aren't clocky trans people out here, because present, I'll be the first one to say I am one. But it is a dangerous discourse for both trans and cis people to go unchecked that you can look at someone and tell those things about them.
I remember joining TERF Twitter as a joke for a video ages ago, and I followed the hashtag protect the dolls, and it turned out to be overridden with people that were jokingly making the point about how unpassing trans women are. The idea that you can always tell. Now, this isn't true. This is provably untrue. Why I think it's so important for the right to claim that line of you can always tell is because for the idea that there are unclockable passing women out there in the trans community as trans women, or vice versa, or trans men, would break their worldview to the point that they can't quite digest that. They wouldn't want to. It'd be shattering for their worldview to imagine that there are trans women out there just living their lives. You can't ever tell. There's nothing you can do to know, and that's just the world we live in, which is the truth, and that's frightening to them. So they live under the assumption that no, we can always tell, even if you can't. Take for example, the hunter shapers of the world, the passing women that have had the privilege, the monetary backing and social backing to get feminization surgery, all of the surgeries, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And anatomically, you just can't tell. That does happen. We'll talk about this more later in the video as well, but with the progression and advancements in technology and gender affirming care, the ability to do so is increasing for generations. Puberty blockers I never had access to, and if I had access to them at a young age, I think my transition would have been entirely different and my quality of life would be different now, to a standard that I will very unlikely ever achieve. And even more so for older generations of trans women that never had access to what I did, especially not with the ease and support and financial like ease as well, and they've kind of given up on certain elements of their transition. So why was I talking about that? So with regards to the argument of like, you can always tell, I also think it's an outdated notion that's specifically targeting those that can't pass. It's like saying, like, if you only want to see yellow Skittles and you can't see red ones, saying like, we can always see a yellow Skittle, it's like, well, of course you can. You're only talking about the Skittles that you can see. You're missing out the whole entire Skittles that you can't see because you can't see them. Why did I just make a massive equivalation to Skittles? I don't know. I think I'm hungry. What I'm trying to say is, you can't tell what you can't tell. Anyway, we know this. Now, this is dangerous because it does come down to survival for many people in the community. The trans panic argument is still usable, I think, in the US. In the West, generally, the idea of like tricking and trapping and the slur trap for trans women is still a shadow hanging over us that we have to contend with all the time. So when we get to a brick and the adjective of being a brick, there is an adjacent, I believe, slur-esque notion to it, because you are taking away the identity of someone who is aiming to pass, if they are, and you're defining them by what they aren't passing with. I think it's adjacent to we can always tell, in my personal opinion, whether it's meant to be used in such or not. And let me be really clear. For many people, not all of them, the difference between being a brick and passing is a set of different actions. They are not necessarily linked to one's identity per se. They're actions we choose that correlate to identity. Like, for a cis woman to use makeup or not is a choice. For a trans woman to use makeup or not is also a choice. Whether that defines whether she's a brick or passable, clocky, fishy, whatever you want to say, that's a different argument. But like, the action to pass more is just that. It's an action. So why do I say this? Well, here is an example of a beautiful creator who is talking about not having to make that action, that active choice to pass.
I get messages from other trans girls that are like, hey, I love what you're saying, but I just wish you would put in some effort and like put on some makeup so you don't make the rest of us look bad. And I think that's really fucked up. In a way, I get why it would piss you off, because when you're sitting there putting on a full face of makeup every day so you don't get clocked, so you do pass, and then here's this other tranny yapping at 500,000 people being like, I don't care that I didn't shave today. I'd be like, what gives? And what gives is my fucks. I don't have them anymore. My transition has been about setting myself free, not about finding another set of gender norms to adhere to. Passability is not going to save us. Devotion to white supremacist beauty standards is not going to save us. Remember the like acceptable gay movement from like the AIDS crisis almost through Obergefell about like, these gays are just normal people and let them into society. They're just like us. At the beginning, it was helpful in opening people's minds, but it ultimately sanitized queerness to the point where folks are still homophobic and they haven't interrogated it. If we can't look at clocky dolls, if we can't look at bricky girls, if we can't look at girls who haven't shaved and still love them as women, we will never set ourselves free. We won't. If you find yourself adhering to gender norms and subscribing to beauty standards, it's probably worth interrogating. Why? What are you getting out of this? Back to the original point, I'm not making you look bad. I'm just a different kind of girl than you are. And that actually speaks to how much our community has grown and evolved. And I think that's a good thing.
Now, I agree to an extent. Good for you. You look great. I wish I had your hair. I still think, though, that the discussion is wider than this, okay? So we will talk about this. We'll talk about privilege. We'll talk about the comments. But first and foremost, do I agree that we shouldn't have to pass? Of course I do. Of course I do. In an ideal world, we would live in a society where you could just decide to do things if you wanted to. You could be the gender identity that you want, regardless of your attire, your physicality, how much makeup you do or don't use. You can just say, I am a woman, and the world will understand that you're a woman, regardless of physicality. In realism, I do think we live in more of a society that does still rely on a binary. And let me know in the comments if this is just me, or if this is an outdated way of thinking. But to an extent, I personally, as a trans woman, quite on one side of the binary, do like that binary for myself. I like to fall quite nicely within the category of female, of woman. Love that some people don't have to, some people that don't want to, some people are in the middle and that choose to be. Absolutely, that's amazing. For me personally, I like to do everything I can to be in one side. And when I say like, I don't mean like I want to pass for me. I enjoy those things. I enjoy putting on makeup. I enjoy having feminine hair. I enjoy speaking in a feminine way. It gives me euphoria. It gives me gender euphoria. If it didn't, there might be another argument of like doing so to have an easier life, to fit in, to survive in this current climate we live in, which we'll get back to in a second. But for now, I just want to make a point that like I do a lot of these things because I want to. I also have the privilege to be able to do them because I want to and not out of necessity, out of survival. Which brings me to my next point. When I was getting ready for this video, I really did toy with the idea of going like no makeup, wearing something less flattering, like hair out of my face and just like in a ponytail or something. And like I really wanted to, but like again, the internet is the internet. Like I have feelings. I don't want to be misgendered and hate crimed any more than I already am in my own comment section. Yes, I know it's happening. Do I have time to mod it? No, I do not. Anyway, so going back to the privilege of not having to pass. Again, like I'm sure people have had this discussion before, but let's dive into it. Like the lovely creator is saying here, like I don't have to pass, neither should anyone else. You can see she has a beard growing through. She has like an Adam's apple on show, like all of these things. Great for you, that's wonderful, and I believe that people should have the freedom and safety to do that. Of course, that's like a no-brainer. Realistically though, do all people have that ability to feel safe doing so? No. Are there crimes happening for people even trying to pass anyway and making the effort to not be clocked? Yes, that is still happening. Like one of the comments says, let's be realistic. This is a privilege that you have, that you don't feel unsafe. And I will say that's much more likely to be a privilege held by white people, white trans women, white women. The Western beauty standards, the Western hegemonic beauty standards of man and woman are rooted in white supremacy. Therefore, white trans women will always have an upper hand just purely because they are white. People of color, women of color have certain like characteristics sometimes that just don't work with those white supremacist beauty standards, and therefore even cis women of color are considered to be not feminine enough. And you see this with transphobic hate crimes happening against cis women. Also, like women in loads of different cultures have like a higher likelihood to grow facial hair and stuff like that, or body hair. And those conversations, when brought into the light, especially in like TERF circles or anti-trans circles, are kind of shooed away and like poopered away. And it's like, well, no, that doesn't count as woman either, even if you're talking about cis women and cis women characteristics. When putting on a bit of makeup, wearing something that works for your body type, covering up your forehead with a full fringe becomes an element of survival, if not just socially like an ease of life, then that decision to do so, it should be shunned upon less from someone that has the privilege of not having to do so. Like the creator we just watched, like you can tell from their like even just their demeanor, their background, the apartment they're in, the fact they're speaking English, like they probably live in a culture where her walking along the road like that, she will get some eyes on her, but she is not in an immediate danger. That isn't the case for all minority groups, even in the same area and all places across the world. Yes, in an ideal world, would we all live exactly how we wanted to, and will anyone have these problems that they face? No, of course that would be ideal, but realistically that isn't the case. And a bit of kind of finger wagging of like we shouldn't have to live to these beauty standards from someone that has the privilege of not having to, I think can come across quite condescending, and it can also separate a community when we need to be as close together as we can. It's less handholdy and more scoldy. In the bigger picture of things though, are those conversations necessary? Yes, they push the conversation forward and they progress things which they do need to do. Again, I'm not saying I have the answer or even a fully fledged opinion on this. I'm just trying to bring light both sides. Adjacent to this whole conversation as well is a point in history where homosexual men had a similar fragmentation within the community. Back when we had the gay panic, again, I think it's 80s, 90s or so, there was a fragmentation within the gay community of should we assimilate and should we try and aim to be the good ones and just live the quiet life and not make too much noise and disrupt the heteronormatives, or should we be different? Should we break away from the Western idea of family, of parenthood, of assimilation of what we should do? Should we go for liberation? However, I think with being trans in this day and age, there is so much more nuance of the physicality of such. If you're a non-passing trans woman, you're 6 foot, you've got huge shoulders, and you haven't had like electrolysis, that option might not be given to you. And again, that option isn't always given to cisgender women who have the same masculine traits and that struggle in life because people don't see them as the woman they are. If you want to consider yourself a brick, if you don't want to pass, if you want to have all of these traits, fantastic to you. 100% you're a part of the community. Protect all dolls. And that is an important part of the community. It pushes the narrative forward. It pushes the discourse forward. It shows that the beauty standards that we are forced into aren't the binary that they should be. They're not real. I'm for that. But does that mean that any trans woman that doesn't pass should be called a brick? No, I don't think so. Yes, we have to be aware of falling in the stereotypical, icky, somewhat misogynistic depictions of a woman. But also, what brings us euphoria is what brings us euphoria. Yeah, we can unpick that. We're going to do a bit at the end of this video. But like, I'm not going to feel sorry for like wanting to be a bit of a girlier girl. Especially not as a trans woman. I still get dysphoria from things that to me aren't feminine about myself. Like, I am in admiration and in awe of trans women that don't feel that have no fear or worry about going out in the world. They have the lowest voice ever. They have like their beards growing through. They don't even care. They're wearing what they want. Like, I think that's fantastic. And I actually orbit around a lot of trans women like that because I think that's wonderful. And obviously we have a mutual understanding and respect for each other's identity. But like, even within the community, like, I am different from that kind of trans woman. Even if I understand the points for liberation and progression in the community, I would still say I'm more passively a kind of assimilation type trans woman. I'm married to a cis man. We live pretty much stealth unless they find my YouTube channel one day in our community. I don't tell anyone that doesn't ask. I do enough to pass when I need to, except for like the one time of the year I go to Trans Pride in the UK, and then I don't give a shit. But they're actively choices I choose to make, and I think that's at the end of it comes down to this. We should be able to make those choices, and we should have the freedom to do so. And again, let me be clear, me having the freedom to make those choices is a privilege I have, probably also given to me heavily because I am a white woman that, especially in Japan where I live, is another kind of safety tick within the passing realm. Like, even if I am a bit cocky at times and I go outside and I'm not quite wearing my makeup or like not doing everything I usually do, I'm just a white girl in Japan. Like, sometimes I've been clocked here, but not very much. Like, not even if they're clocking, they're also in disbelief anyway. So now let's talk a bit more about the process of transitioning, because we see so much in mainstream media, modern media, this kind of before and after depiction of transitioning. Like, I don't know, I grew up with this like the Caitlyn Jenner effect of like someone disappears for a year, they come back after various surgeries, after having done HRT, and then they appear back in the spotlight, this finished product. Now, all of the trans people in the community, not just the trans women, all of you will know that is not the case. You'll be nodding along. Because of that, I think also we have had the effect on the right and right-wing pundits that like they fear that like their kid's going to come home having been transitioned at school, which is like, if anyone knows anything about trans people, that is like a laughable notion. Regardless, let's not get into that. The process of transitioning, though, is also one that often, not always, but often sees people going from being a bit more bricky and clocky, moving towards passing and taking those, gender euphoric steps of gender affirming care to get to where they want to be. This also has changed with generations as well. Now, what do I mean by that? I'm a millennial, I'm sure you can tell, just from my pausing every so often before I start what I'm going to say. But like, generations above me didn't have the same access to gender affirming care. Even technology hadn't progressed to the extent it has in the West or globally to allow for transitioning at such an early age and such a quick process as well. I know several older trans women that like knew they were trans from the similar age to all of us, but never had access to the same things or the same support mechanisms or monetary, privileges to be able to transition in the same way, and so they've just lived a lot of their life knowing that they're a woman, but they haven't been able to do anything about it physically. And then, you know, if they are finally able to at like 60 or 70, the effects of transitioning are going to be extremely different. Like, you go through a second puberty, I think it's about like 35 years old, you have more of a frontal forehead, you have like a different body hair growth, you have a different body entirely, and transitioning that from the same mechanisms that we use at a younger age is going to have a different effect. So generationally, we see a divide between those on the other side. For example, the Gen Alpha, Gen Z that had, you know, access to puberty blockers from a lot younger of an age, has much more of a social awareness about what transitioning is. Parents can see the signs from a younger age. Like, we see kids now being raised gender non-conforming, and so when they voice, like, actually I think I'm a different gender than what I was born as, the parents know what to do. Or unfortunately, obviously, we don't always see that is followed through, and we see the backlash from this. But just as a society, as a culture, as a global civilization, transitioning in many countries is much more accessible. I'm somewhere kind of in the middle of this, whereas like, I knew I was a girl at school. I told all my friends, but I couldn't do anything about it. I remember at 18 having like lots of therapy and telling my therapist, like, I think I should have been a woman, and I think it's about time I did something about this. My parents were aware, and the therapist was just like, well, you're still young, go to uni, meet a few people and see how you feel. Turns out at 21, I still needed the same things, and my life was harder because it took so long to do so. Now, again, obviously, and I'm still very privileged. I had, money growing up enough to get what I needed. I had HRT before the waiting list got too long. And in a few years' time, I had bottom surgery paid for by this like UK government, which was, in the wider world we live in now, fantastic. And I will never forget the privileges and the things I've had. But like, consider that even to younger generations that have puberty blockers, that socially transition like quite young. They don't have the same physical traits of growing through a puberty in the wrong gender. Like, they will pass a lot earlier. And with more ease, let's say. So why do I bring this up? Well, the differentiation in the community to be calling certain people bricks and other people like passable, or fish is a term often used, is like, I think there is also an argument for the divide of that being generational and being that access to care. Whilst we're now talking a bit different to the like decision to do these things, let's just talk about the realism and the physicality. Like, there are different elements of passability within the community. So for the younger generations, or for anyone that was actively just, you know, passed quite easily, had access to a lot more care than usual, to kind of finger wag at the community that haven't had access to those things, that don't pass, that are bricks, to me is also quite inconsiderate to just the world around you, I guess. And to take that a step further, what I would also say is that like, many people in the community that now pass and that are living in the modern day era where they have gone through these surgeries and that they are accessing that level of passing, they often forget where they came from and forget how in the past, you know, they maybe were a bit of a brick and they had problems passing and they got clocked a bit more than they do now. And so I think it's quite sad to see that like, people are quick to forget other people beginning that process, and having less grace for people at the beginning of that process that haven't quite had as much electrolysis on their beard and they haven't worked on their voice. Those people are still, you know, in their own journey. They're still valid, whether they choose to do those things or not. And we should all try and just aim to be in the same community and kind of work together, because hell knows we got the rest of the right to like go against all of these TERFs and all these right-wing people that are like against us. The last thing we should do now is start like breaking off into minorities within the trans community, because that is, I think, not good for us personally.
Can you imagine in 2025, there are still trans girls out there calling people bricks? There are still trans girls out there saying, she's a brick, she's a brick, she's a brick. Baby, you are a brick too. Before your daddy and your mommy paid for your fucking surgeries. Okay? Yeah, you're a brick. Before the government, health insurance paid for your fucking surgeries. The before and afters, unrecognizable. And then those same girls, it's like they got brain surgery too to forget their fucking privilege. I get it. Not every trans girl can be conventionally attractive. Not every trans girl can be passable. That is just the way it is. But the actual nerve of a lot of passing pretty girls, trans girls, that are like, oh, look at that brick. Look at that brick. It's like, girl, did you forget where you came from? Did you forget where you came from? I used to use the word brick all the time before I knew what weight that word held. The cheek of these bitches to like literally have memory loss and where they started and where they are now to be calling bitches brick.
So before I get to my thoughts and my feelings on this, I wonder if like we should branch out a few more terms, because as in Urban Dictionary, the term for brick is, as I say, like trans woman that doesn't pass. Like, I understand the reclaiming of that for certain people. They are owning that, and they should be able to, absolutely, and I support that. Love my brick dolls. I wonder if there should be another word for like people that aren't quite happy in that process and they want to pass but they're not quite there yet. Like, I wonder if we can get something like to try and get Gen Z on board, like cooking, like she's still cooking, or like, you know, like we say like a trans woman is an egg, like she's still boiling, she's still, what do we say, what's an egg, what do you do to an egg? Scrambling. She's still scrambling. Oh, that's cute. Oh my god, she's still scrambling. She's on her way to being a full-fledged fried egg. No, wait, that sounds weird. She's scrambled. She's like, yeah, she's still in the process. Do you know what I mean? She's still cooking. She's still like seeking. Wait, this could be a good one. Is growing her wings too cheesy? Growing her wings is a bit cheesy, isn't it? Like, she's still growing her wings. Okay, hear me out. For a trans woman that isn't quite finished doing what she wants to do to pass, she's still in the dressing room. I think that kind of works. Oh, she's not quite finished her hair removal. She's still in the dressing room. She's gonna be out of the dressing room any minute now. Or like, oh, I'm still in the dressing room. I don't know what to do. Like, can you help me pick my eyeliner? Oh, okay, we're gonna go with that. I don't think this will catch on, but this is just like a fun activity I'm doing. And then for anyone passing and that have like finished the process and they have nothing else they want to do, like, because fish is also, I think, a bit, some people say problematic. I think like just finished. She's finished. Not like, oh, she's finished. Like, she's done. That's old. That's old. That's old. That's out. Oh, that's out. That's out. No, she's finished. Like, oh, she is so finished. Like, she's finished. Like, her makeup is finished. Her outfit has been put together. Maybe that's already one, actually, and I'm absolutely just stealing it. And I'm doing the same thing I thought I was trying to help with before. Finished. Her makeup is finished. Is that a thing? If not, I think we should officially call that to the dolls that are, they've done everything they want to do to pass. They are what we would have once said was fish, and now they're just finished. So then it also kind of linguistically sounds similar. So we got the finished dolls and the dolls still in the dressing room. Okay, what do you think? Rate me 1 out of 10 on my ability to come up with new terms. And if this for some reason goes viral and these become words, I'll have like done something for the community. That'd be nice. Anyway. Okay, so what can I say? Of course, my absolute opinion is that everyone should feel comfortable to do or not do what they want, to or not to pass. You should be happily a brick. You should be able to make action to pass if you want to. But if you're still in that process, then that's also fine as well, and you will get there eventually. I wish everyone had the resources and ability to get the gender affirming care they want. Unfortunately, though, realistically, we live in a time where that is trying to be actively taken away. And I think people that are talking on this should be aware of that. I think we should also be aware of different cultures and the Western idea of beauty being systematically drawn by white supremacy and white hegemony. I just think, hey, it's never too late to be aware of your privilege. Like, I don't know. Still, like, but so when we talk about like being called a brick, like I said earlier in the video, like I would be personally so upset if someone called me a brick. I get similar hate messages and hate crimes in the messages. Doesn't bother me. But a well-intentioned cis woman calling me a brick would kind of break my heart, because it's like, I feel like I'm taking a lot of action to pass. It would feel like akin to being misgendered, that like, oh, you're not there and that's okay, you know? Now, to think about this and to do some work, like, should I be offended by that. If you ask me, like, do I fundamentally love my identity as who I am? Yes, of course I do. I know I'm loved in my marriage, regardless of my like gender identity, especially because of it. It's a part of who I am. It's also shaped my character and my personality as well. And I'm also just a happier person. No, I'm not ashamed to be who I am. But do I want to be considered along the binary of woman? Yes. Regardless as to like knowing where I've come and what I've done to get there. Like I still place myself very firmly in the one side of women. Absolute respect to everyone else on the spectrum of the gender. But like for me, like I would consider myself like 100% straight. Like I consider myself 100% a woman, and being called a brick to me personally would feel like I was being taken away from that place in the binary. With absolute respect to everyone that isn't worried about being in that binary, for me, I am. And that has shaped how I am as a person, the decisions I have made, the joy I feel every day from having smooth skin, having makeup on my face, the fact that I choose to put my monetary resources and time and energy into achieving those things is because they bring me joy. They bring me gender euphoria, but they also bring me joy. And so I actively do those things. Now, the real question is, though, if we lived in a world where I didn't have to do those things and I was still just considered a woman, would I still do them? I don't know. Maybe not to the same extent, it's true. So, for example, hypothetically, if I didn't have to do anything active, like if a woman still could have facial hair in modern day society, if it was like in like a parallel universe, basically, like in like a few hundred years ago, men wore makeup and or whatever, like, saying we lived in a different world entirely where women didn't have to do those things, then I guess then the definition of what a woman would be would have, changed. So my action to adhere to that role would have also changed. Oh, tea. Does that make sense? So like, for example, with my mum to me is as a symbol of womanhood, of like what a woman is. I think I'm lucky enough to have a mum and know my mum, but like what she did and didn't do as a woman has affected what I do and don't do. Okay, so I think that about sums up everything I want to say. If you are a cis person, don't be calling trans people bricks, please. That's my advice to you. If you have, like, no worries if you misunderstood, all good, water under the bridge. But yeah, let me know in the comments your thoughts about this. I definitely read them all. I don't always reply. I don't always get to them all. But I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you stuck around to the end, thank you so much. I hope you had fun. If you're new to the channel, hi. My name's Louise. I make videos. I'm trying to do 2 a week and I'm failing miserably. We've just moved house. It's a whole big thing. And also I don't have the internet. So to upload this, I'm going to have to go to a cafe and like painstakingly upload it on Wi-Fi. Anyway, when things sort out, and we'll get back to a bit of a regularly scheduled programming. But for now, I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope it was educational to some people. I hope it was just entertaining to listen along to. If you agree and you're just like, yes, facts. Or if you disagree, please let me know as well. I'm open to criticism and I would love to take things further. I can always do another video if we need to move the conversation somewhere else. I'm hungry. That's my whole belly going. Thank you so much for sticking around. I love you all very much, and take care of yourselves. Be safe. Do what you need to pass and survive. If you don't have to, then good for you. Enjoy your life. Be as bricky as you feel. If you're still in the dressing room, that's valid too. And if you are finished, good for you. I'm happy. You look great. You look wonderful. Have a wonderful day. Take care of yourselves. I love you all very much, and I'll see you soon. Bye. Also, post note, you know. What do we feel about the blonde? Okay, I went blonde with literally box dye, and yes, it's a bit orange. I'm aware of this. We're gonna go a shade or 2 lighter next time, but I don't know. I think again. Oh my god, why did I not talk about this? Why did I go blonde? Let me tell you why. Because my hairline is receding under here, and it's also thinning. It's like a thing that happens, and by going blonde, I just distract the eye a little bit from the like lack of hair. In some of my videos as well, like some of the comments were people being like, girl, your hairline is terrible. Of course you're a man. But like I did have blonde hair before, and this was for the same reason. I think it helps me pass with my hairline and stuff like that. It also means I don't have to worry too much about always having a full fringe. But like this again is another thing I did to pass, and that's valid and that's okay. And if you want to go blonde to help your hairline, do the same too if you just decide to. But you know, it's kind of that. It's that I think it's just a little bit more flattering. I think my dark hair was very like strong against my white lighter skin. So I don't know, that's just something I just did, okay? And that's just something I did. I'm still in the dressing room, as I say, as I made up earlier. But yeah, let me know what you think about the blonde. Anyway, have a wonderful day. Take care of yourselves. I love you very much. Bye.